Hello and welcome to the preview on the Fulhamish YouTube channel. My name's Elizabeth Barnard and I'll be your host. Today we're looking forward to, I'm going to say it, our most important game of the season so far against Manchester United in the fifth round of the FA Cup. And I'm delighted to be joined by Jay from Stretford Paddock. Jay, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm all right. I'm just a little bit nervous going into this game. I'm nervous ahead of every game. With being a United fan at the minute, it's like there are no easy games for Manchester United. And me and you were chatting then before we started recording about the fact that you reminded me of the fact that United have done the double over Fulham. So I think there's the revenge element. Also, there was the FA Cup game. Was it a couple of years ago?
We'll come on to that.
Yeah, all the red cards. So I think Fulham have got a point to prove. And then when you throw in that this is the biggest game of the season, I think that makes me a little bit more nervous. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's going to be an emotional one for Fulham fans, I think. I'm already feeling very nervous and we're still a few days away. Firstly, it would be great to have a little bit of a zoomed out look at Manchester United's season so far. Obviously, I imagine there's a lot to say. From the outside, it seems it's been a bit of a soap opera on and off the pitch. Are all eyes on the FA Cup now? Is that what it's all about?
It's not, to be honest with you. I'll give you my perspective. And I can speak for myself, and obviously I run a channel and I'll speak to quite a lot of people, either friends who are United fans got the game or just people that interact with the channel. And certainly from my perspective and from a lot of people to chat to, I think the Europa might be a little bit more of an important competition, or a more important competition for us, just because it offers us Champions League football. I think for a lot of people, they're looking at it going, do you know what? It offers us Champions League football, and I think it's actually easier to win the Europa League than it is to win the FA Cup now, this season, because you haven't had the Champions League people drop down, or the Champions League teams drop down. You know, usually like teams that finish third in their group will drop out of the Champions League. We haven't had that this season. So you look at the games we've got now. I don't want anyone misconstruing what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's easy to win the Europa League. It isn't. And we might get beat off Sociedad, and that'll be the end of that. But you've got teams like Sociedad, who United are playing. You've got Spurs are in it. I think Lazio. These are good teams, but they're beatable teams. That's why they're in the Europa in the first place. Now, look at the FA Cup. I know Liverpool have been knocked out, and obviously we knocked Arsenal out. But you've still got some big teams in there. Obviously, City, who will have a point to prove as well, because they're not going to win the league or the Champions League, obviously, this season. So I think the FA Cup is slightly more difficult, and also it doesn't give you Champions League if you win it. You get Europa League, which is still, United will take that, because I think, we're not going to get there in our league position. But if I had to choose, I'm not saying we're going to get that, but if you gave me a choice of which trophy would I rather win, I'd rather win the Europa League, just because the facts I think you can get us into well, not because I know it gets into Champions League. And if you're asking me which is probably the easiest to win, I'd go with the Europa as well. But that's not to say this isn't a big game, because the one thing that's kept us going this season, kept me going as a United fan, has been the fact we're still in the cup competitions. Last season was terrible for the league. We finished 8th. I mean, this season's worse, but last season was poor. But it ended on such a high.
Yeah.
And it almost made it worth it, because we beat Liverpool 4-3 in that quarter-final at Old Trafford, which was just a fantastic game. Then we beat City in the final as well. We'll forget about the Coventry semi-final. We don't need to talk about that. So to have those two games, and especially to beat City, 2 academy players scoring the goals, and the performance we put in, stop them doing the double as well. It was just fantastic. It really was. So the FA Cup was great last season, and it'd be an amazing achievement to win it this season. And I love it. I love it as a fan. One of my favourite competitions. I've got some great memories there. But I just think the Europa League could salvage this season for us in a big way. And if we end up with Champions League football next season, that's going to help us. And as you mentioned then, off the pitch, United have got a lot of issues going on. Champions League football could help some of those issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, am I right that after this fixture, Manchester United have a Europa League game next Thursday?
Yeah, I think we're away at Sociedad.
Okay. Would it be optimistic for me to hope, maybe pray, that there might be an eye on that? Or do you think I'm being a little bit naive?
Listen, the one thing I will say is Manchester United struggled to play against anyone in 2 games in a week. So I don't think we can afford to look ahead to the next game. We have to focus on the game. And if we do, if the manager, I don't think he would, but if the manager was to say, oh, well, we've got Sociedad in Thursday, let's rest someone, we'd be in all sorts of trouble. We haven't got the squad for it, and we haven't been able to put in the performances that warrant that sort of attitude. United have to go all out against Fulham. We have to play our strongest team. We have to focus on that, and then we worry about Sociedad once the Fulham game is out of the way. Because this isn't a Sir Alex Ferguson United team where you might rotate and you might bring a few kids in and you might, swap your strikers around or bring in a couple of players who are squad members who don't always start. This is a United team that is struggling. We're in the bottom half of the table. I think we're 14th. We've got massive injuries as well. Kobbie Mainoo's out. Ahmad's out. Martinez is out, obviously, who scored the winner at Craven Cottage. So we've got issues. We can't, sorry to bring that up, but we can't afford to worry about or think about the Sociedad game now. We have to focus on the Fulham game because, we might have beaten twice this season, but let's not pretend those were games where United dominated and it was just like we swept Fulham aside. Those were close games. The opening game at Old Trafford was a close game.
Yeah.
And the one at Craven Cottage, which just mentioned, was close as well. It could have gone either way. So I don't think United will be taking this one for granted. And I think that just from a sort of morale point of view, if we can get a little bit deeper, losing at home again, we've lost a lot of games, and getting outside the FA Cup at home to a side that we've beaten twice this season would be a bit of a kick in the teeth. So United have to focus on the Fulham game and worry about Sociedad as and when.
Yeah, okay. That's obviously not what I want to hear, but it makes total sense. I'd love to talk about your squad at the moment. Obviously quite decimated by injuries, from what I understand. Ahmad's out for the season, right?
Yeah. I think that's the thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, Martinez, who scored the winner at Craven Cottage, obviously, has got a bit of a running battle with Adama Traore, is also going to be missing. And off the back of the game last night against Ipswich, Dorgu will be out as well with the suspension from the red card.
Yeah.
Are there any other squad issues that I should know about? It seems that things are looking relatively threadbare looking at recent United benches, but obviously you have that star power from people like Bruno Fernandes.
No, you make a great point because I think all eyes are on Bruno. He's been a bit of a talking point this week on our channel. You might have seen on the overlap, Roy Keane being quite harsh on him. Rio Ferdinand's gone the other way and stuck up for him. We know what Bruno's capable of. He's a hugely talented footballer. He's our captain. He's the one man who you can sort of rely on to produce a little bit of magic when you need it. We are missing the key players you mentioned. Kobbie Mainoo's a massive player for us. Martinez, as you mentioned, and obviously Ahmad is the one who's been getting the goals.
Yeah.
And it's the lack of goals that worries me the most because, talk about Martinez. I think he's like our second top scorer away from home this season. I think he's about 2. But it's something like that. We've struggled. I know we're at home for this game, but we've struggled to score goals. I think Rasmus Højlund's gone, something like 16 games without a goal. Something ridiculous.
That was crazy.
Joshua Zirkzee, it is crazy. Joshua Zirkzee, I think he scored one in the FA Cup, but he's struggled in the league. I know this isn't the league, this is the FA Cup, but he's not been prolific. Garnacho's not scored for, I think it's a dozen games. I mean, we are struggling. We are really struggling for goals. And that is a massive concern. You saw the game against Ipswich. You think we scored 3 goals. 1 was an own goal and 2 were from our centre-backs.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm not saying, it's a travesty that those goals came that way, but it sort of highlights or reminds you that our strikers and our attackers ain't scoring. And that is a problem for me as a Manchester United fan right now. People were looking at maybe Chido Obi, who's a kid who came from Arsenal. He's 17. Maybe him getting some minutes against Ipswich. He came on against Spurs. I think he had about 3 minutes. Then he came on against Everton. He had about 25 minutes, 20 minutes. Did okay. But the fact you're even thinking about 17-year-olds who've not really played much starting for you or getting more minutes shows where Manchester United are at. We're struggling for goals. We really are. And that could be our undoing when it comes to this sort of latter part of the season and trying to win trophies and trying to climb on that table, because you can't keep relying on your centre-backs or own goals for goals. You need your attackers to step up. And as I mentioned there, our attackers, they're just not doing that.
Yeah, I remember we've had similar debates about Fulham players in terms of when we've been struggling for goals, wanting to bring in kids from the academy. And when we have, there obviously have been bright moments, but generally they've been quite ineffective and not quite up to the level, in my opinion. And I think that bringing a young kid in when they're not quite ready for it can do a huge amount of damage to their confidence going forward. So
yeah, I completely agree. By the way, that's I mean, the thing that talk about United DNA, the one sort of consistent theme with Manchester United throughout the years, whether that's Busby, Ferguson, or anything that's come in between or after, has been we do give our academy a chance. We do lean on our academy, the Busby Babes, the Class of '92, Charlton, players like that. Even more recently, Marcus Rashford, obviously Kobbie Mainoo. We've got a strong relationship and reliance on our academy, and they've always done us proud. But you can't start throwing in kids when everything's going wrong. The reason the Class of '92 was successful is because they came into a team that had experienced, successful players in there. You had Roy Keane, you had Eric Cantona, you had Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister already in that team, Peter Schmeichel. It wasn't a team that was struggling. It was a team that, had just finished second in the league and had a lot of experience in it. If you're going to bring in youngsters now, you're going to be bringing them into a team that's already struggling. And that is counterproductive. And that is, probably a similar situation you've had at Fulham where the team's not been doing great. And it's like, well, he's throwing in some kids going to fix it. It'll get the crowd going a little bit and you get behind the youngsters. Obviously, you can get that little bit, maybe that little bit of energy and that sort of almost devil-may-care attitude that you get from younger players, but you need that bit of experience. You don't want to be throwing them into a team that is really in the doldrums. And let's not kid ourselves, a win against Ipswich doesn't change that. This is a United team, especially at Old Trafford, that's going through it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely what I've seen. So where are United going to be able to hurt Fulham? Yesterday, was it 3 set-piece goals? Is that an area where you're dangerous, or was that a fluke against Ipswich?
Don't kid yourself, right? You might have watched that game and thought, oh, United are good at set pieces. We're not. We don't tend to score from set pieces. Bizarrely, I think our last 5 goals, I think 4 of them have come from set pieces. Bruno with a free kick and 3 from corners, I think. I might be getting that slightly wrong. But yeah, at Goodison and at Old Trafford. But that's not the norm. We tend to struggle at set pieces. We're not that clinical. We tend to struggle defending them as well. And it was a bit of a refreshing change, to be honest with you, to see us actually do something. It might be something they're looking at with the lack of goals. And maybe, I don't know how you focus more on set pieces. You always try and score from a corner. You always try and score a free kick. So it's not like all of a sudden you go, okay, we're not scoring from attackers. Let's try and score from set pieces. We've always been trying to do that. We just seem to be in the situation where we've been a little bit more successful of late. But I don't necessarily think that is an area where I would say United are strong. Who knows? Or maybe this is a little bit of a moment for us. Maybe we've improved. Maybe we've kicked on. I'm not sure. We have got players that are good aerially. De Ligt, Maguire are good in the air. Bruno can deliver a decent set piece at most times. So we should be better at set pieces, to be honest with you. But we're not clinical at all. And I wouldn't, if I was a Fulham fan, I wouldn't be looking at that and going, that's where United can really hurt us. We could do, but it's certainly not been the case most of this season.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I did watch the game last night, but I thought also Ipswich are very bad from defending from set pieces.
You're right.
It was more that way.
Kieran McKenna said that, didn't he? I think you're right. He said something about that, and the sort of, I think, was it the Maguire one where it was almost a free header?
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, if you're scoring an own goal from a set piece, was it Morsey with the own goal? That's down to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't a great example from Ipswich. I bet Kieran McKenna was kicking himself because obviously a former United coach, he'll have known that game was there to be won even before we went down to 10 men, and especially because we give him a goal start. So yeah, I think it was one of those where they kind of played into our hands a little bit.
Yeah. And so where are Fulham going to be able to hurt Manchester United? Obviously, the headline mistakes that we've seen a bit throughout the season, last night's a good example, but also in previous games, it seems that there's sometimes a little bit of sloppiness at the back. But I'm hoping that we've got really speedy wingers will be able to hurt you out wide. Do you think that is something where we'll be able to threaten United?
Yeah, most definitely. I think we've struggled at times this season against teams that have sort of pace up front and pace in attack. I think you go back to, I look at the Southampton game as a good example. Southampton are statistically one of the worst Premier League teams ever. There's a chance they might end up finishing with the lowest points tally of any Premier League team. I think they're still on for that. I think they've got like 9 points, and I think the lowest is Derby with 12. back in 2006, whenever it was. So they might end up doing that. And they caused all sorts of problems. They really did. They were running at us. They were sort of getting in those little spaces between the wing back and the centre back and just causing us issues. Now, missing Dorgu is going to be a bit of a blow because he'd come in and the Ipswich game aside, I know he didn't have a great game then, but he looked lively. He looked like the sort of player that fits perfectly into Ruben Amorim's system. I think if you look at Diogo Dalot, he's struggled this season. He really has. I think his best game was at Anfield, and that was basically because Trent Alexander-Arnold had an absolute stinker.
Yeah,
genuinely one of the worst games I've ever seen him. Yeah, it was terrible, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was weird.
So bad.
It was
one
so
of the
bad.
poorest performances.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I mean, I'm glad he did, but I was like, what is going on? This is just odd how bad he's performing. So that helps us a little bit. But Delot's not having a great season. Mazraoui, who can play either as a wing back or he can maybe play as back in part of a back three, started off really strongly, really well, but he struggled. And then you look at sort of the other options we've got. There aren't many as in the wing back position. So I think that is an area where Fulham could hurt us down those wings. The one thing I will say though, if Fulham decided to start off on the front foot, if they were like, look, this United team is here for the taking, we've got players that can hurt them, get at them, that might play into our hands a little bit because we've tended to play better against teams like that. Mm-hmm. Not all the time. We've had some bad results against teams like that have come at us. But if you look at our better results at the Emirates in the earlier stage of the FA Cup, that's 10 men. Obviously, Arsenal on the front foot, we end up going through to the next round, we win the game. At the Etihad, City, obviously, they're going to be, expected to get at us, and they tried their best to do that. And again, we won for the first time in a little while at the Etihad. And at Anfield, yes, Trent Alexander-Arnold helped us, but again, Liverpool getting at us, and we were able to sort of soak up a lot of pressure and hit them on the break. And we should have won that game at Anfield. It annoys me a little bit that we didn't. So maybe there's something in that. Even the Ipswich game, you might laugh and say Ipswich played against United. It should be United attacking Ipswich, not the other way around. And you're right. But we went down to 10 men, and then it became more a case of us soaking up the pressure and hitting them almost on the counter. So that might be a way that plays into our hands. I think we have struggled when teams have sort of sat back a little bit and the onus has been on us, especially at Old Trafford. We've struggled. You look at the Crystal Palace game. Yeah. That, for me, is probably a better example for Fulham of look what they did and look how they got a relatively comfortable win. Brighton, another one. Newcastle. I mean, is there a big gulf in class between the likes of Crystal Palace and Fulham? I'd say there isn't. And Crystal Palace were worthy winners that day. So I think you might look at that game and go, that's the kind of performance, the kind of blueprint we can use.
Yeah, we have saying that teams that come out against you fast is you can hurt them. It's difficult because we scored at Wolves in the first 90 seconds of both halves. So maybe if we have that attacking attempt when we come to Old Trafford, we'll be burnt a little bit. Jay, thank you so much for joining me. I would love to get a score prediction before we go. How are you feeling that this one plays out?
I've been very negative my score predictions recently because I'm the guy that's usually very deluded and optimistic. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of got in my favour because I'm always wrong. I've been wrong and we've been winning. We've won a few games. We've beat Leicester and we beat Ipswich. I know it's not as much to shout about. And then we got a draw at Goodison. So I might predict a Fulham win. And maybe there is a little bit of sort of me saying, oh, I always get it wrong. But also I think that I am worried. That FA Cup game we played against you last time, I think there's a bit of needle there still, especially Marco Silva. He's going to be absolutely chomping at the bit for a bit of revenge after what happened that day, where it was just red card central. So, yeah, I think Fulham might edge this one on penalties.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. I'm going to go for the opposite kind of to you. I'm feeling sick with nerves about it, to be honest. As soon as the ball was pulled out of the hat, and you're right, that game, that 3-1 2 years ago, still haunts me. I still think about it most weeks. And if I could have like hypnotherapy to remove it from my brain, I would. It is, I've never been in a worse mood after a game. To come so close to Wembley and yet have been obviously so far. But I think United are going to win after extra time. I've just got a feeling that this is the end of the road for us in the Cup, but I'm keeping everything crossed that we'll be able to do the business. Jay, thank you so much for joining me.
I've enjoyed chatting to you, Elizabeth. Good chat, and I'm not going to wish you luck, obviously, but I wish you luck for the rest of the season after Sunday.
Yeah, and ditto. I hope you have all the worst luck on Sunday, but after that, I hope things have maybe a little upturn. Thank you so much for watching the preview on the YouTube channel. The team will be back on Sunday with a quick take. And one last thing to say before I go is that we're doing a live show after the Spurs game on the 16th of March at the Half Moon in Putney. Tickets will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching.